I'm Jennifer Johnson and I raise sheep for their wool.
Welcome to Whispering Pines Shetland Sheep Farm in western New York State, home to our lovely flock of soft Shetland sheep. We breed and raise our sheep to produce soft, crimpy wool for hand spinners to enjoy. Thank you for liking this video and for subscribing to our channel.
Here in western New York, when autumn arrives, you get colder temperatures, you get overcast skies, and shorter days. So for our farm, that brings along a bunch of different conditions that change the things that we do on the farm. So first of all, colder temperatures mean the grass isn't growing any longer. So there's no more growth of grass on the pastures. They're not recovering after we put the sheep on them. So they've eaten all of them down. So now what they're going to do is they're going to stay on this front pasture all through the winter. So this is the northernmost pasture, closest to the barn. It's the shortest distance for them to get to a lot, an open lot. And it's closest to the house, so I can easily see them and watch them from the kitchen window, which I love. And that lasts out throughout the whole winter until the pastures return in the spring. Usually after we've completed lambing, then we'll start rotating them around onto the different pastures. Shorter days, what that means is, our equipment has been modified ever so slightly, so it's dark when it's time to feed them at night. So we've brought out the headlamps, and colder temperatures too. Obviously, I'm in my winter gear here with the insulated coveralls and jacket. So things are, we have to adjust to the climate here, which is great. The cloudy, overcast skies, that means eventually here we're going to be getting snow. And the sheep love the cold weather. They love the snow. When the temperatures get really hot in the summer, that's when they struggle. But in the winter, I fully expect to see them out here, playing, jumping, frolicking, just enjoying themselves with the cold weather. So another thing we have to deal with when the weather turns cold is the water freezes. So I'm already noticing, even though we're not really in real harsh cold temperatures yet, but I'm noticing just a little glaze of ice on top of the water buckets when I come out in the morning to take care of the sheep. So eventually we're going to be needing to put electric buckets and replacing all the buckets, including the ones outside, with electric. And that involves running extension cords to each of the pens, me finding the buckets in the barn where we store them, and testing them to make sure they work. So it's a whole big project, and we'll make a video about that for those of you that are curious about using heated buckets on your farm. They're really important, and we use them every year. Usually when we set up the breeding groups, we're going to set up the heated water buckets. It's really important because they're not going to drink water that's frozen. Obviously, if it's a solid, they can't drink it. And they're less likely to drink it if it's really cold and has chunks of ice floating in it. So it's always something to do here, no matter what time of the year when you look at the shepherd's calendar. So the shorter days with sheep sets off a hormonal reaction in the ewes where they become in heat, also called in estrus. It's the time of the year where they are fertile and can be bred. They can be either artificially inseminated or impregnated by a ram, a male of the species. So it's a period of time when the days get shorter. Usually around September is when they start, which is why we tend to start being a little bit cautious about having sheep, ewes and rams sharing a fence line, because the rams they can breed the ewes. Oops, sorry. The males can breed the ewes. The ewes just kind of scooch up, push their butts up against the fence, and the rams service them when it's time for them. I did a really good, in my opinion, detailed video last year about breeding sheep. So if you want to get detail about that, I talk about the cycles and all the different things. This year, what I want to talk about specifically are the constraints that we're facing with breeding. So we breed our sheep every year because we like to get lambs in the spring. We like to, try to upgrade the wool based on whatever the goals are. I mean, our overreaching goal is always that we raise sheep for wool for hand spinners to enjoy. And for the last 20 years, that has meant fine crimpy, good staple, a nice variety of colors. So, but it does seem that, you know, there's specific goals each year that sort of guide how we select the sheep that we're going to be breeding with. But in the very beginning, like right around now, this is mid-November, we really kind of solidify what the constraints are, what things are going to guide the planning. And there's 3 big constraints this year that we are looking at, and they're not a negative, it's just kind of the way things are. So the first thing is a really good constraint, which is our son Will and his partner Rachel are due to have a baby on December 3rd. So I'm going to be a grandmother for the first time. So I'm over the moon about that, and that sort of has shadowed everything else that goes on. I just can't believe it. So I'm really happy about that. But normally that's right in the thick of breeding. We usually set up breeding groups in Thanksgiving weekend, which here in the States, that's a holiday. It's the 4th week, I think, fourth weekend in November. So we'll set up the groups then, and then we usually break them up at the beginning of the year in January. But we can't set up, we've decided that we're not going to set up breeding groups until after the baby comes, because during breeding season, you've got different separate pens for each breeding group, each ram that you use, plus a pen for the ewes that you're not breeding, plus a pen for any ram. So there's just all these pens, all this water to tend, hay, different quantities for different pens. It's just kind of, it's probably the most complex time of the year to ask someone to help do chores. So what we've decided to do is we're going to leave everything the way it is right now, so it's not that complex. Everybody's getting hay. So yeah, so this paddock here now, because the pastures, even though they seem to be eating grass, what they're doing is just ripping out grass that's like this short. I think it's just kind of an impulse for them, but they're being fed hay morning and evening now, as are all the rams. So we're going to hold off on putting the breeding groups together until after the baby's born. It'll be later in December. The baby's due December 3rd. Hopefully he comes right around that time and goes full term and whatnot. We've set up a breeding group a few years ago at the end of December, and all of them got bred and had ewes. All of them had ewes, coincidentally. I don't know if that was cause and effect, but so we're going to set up the groups after we get back from being with Will and Rachel and their baby, and then just kind of see what happens. And we'll be here to do all the work that's involved in taking care of those pens. So that's the first constraint. I mean, that means then is we're going to have lambs later in May than we normally do, which is fine. The second constraint is, so last year we had lambs out of our ewe Lucretia, who is out of Elara. Both of them are white ewes, and white is a color that we've really wanted to add as a proportion of our flock. But last year Lucretia had a lamb that she just had this affliction. Nobody really knew what it was. The vet didn't know. The labs at Cornell, we weren't able to identify it as any kind of viral or bacterial condition. And so the only conclusion we can draw is it could possibly be a genetic issue, a genetic defect. And so what we decided is we're not going to breed Elara any longer, nor are we going to breed any of her offspring. There are offspring that she had that have never had lambs that had this condition, but it's just we are very cautious, and it was kind of hard to manage that lamb. We ended up having to put her down. So shutting down that line, which is a little bit disappointing because we really love those ewes, and we did want to add more white, but it's okay. We have to set that whole group aside. Now, that being said, if someone showed an interest in those ewes for a wool flock, a spinner's flock, then that would be great. That would probably, that would work out really well. But we just aren't gonna. I actually did a couple sales this year, groups that I sold to farms for breeding, and deliberately did not include any of those ewes because it's just a big unknown. And unfortunately, there's 2 AI ewes in that group, the artificially inseminated ewes that we had a couple of years ago. But I mean, that's farming. You can't predict, and you know, you just gotta go with go with the flow, go with the punches. So that's another constraint. The third constraint is one that we always deal with, which is relatedness within the flock. So we don't breed siblings, we don't bring mothers to sons. We will breed great grandparents and the great grandchild. So it's 3 degrees of separation is an acceptable pairing for us. So we brought in 2 rams from another farm that's also breeding for fine fleece Shetlands. So it's possible we'll use those. Another possibility, because a lot of our sheep are related to Sebastian and Duncan, they were the 2 rams that we really like, and we've used them really heavily. So if we use them again, a lot of the yearlings and 2-year-olds we wouldn't be able to breed because they're so closely related. So what we're thinking about doing is just rebreeding some ewes to Duncan and Sebastian that we bred to before, older ewes in our flock like O'Brien, Baxter, Susan, the ewes that are maybe 5, 6, they're still perfectly viable and able to carry lambs and care for them. We've just always kind of been working with the younger stuff because we wanted to breed improved ewes. Having said that, all the older ewes that we have on the farm now are really good. So that's probably the way that we're going to manage that constraint. We've got, like I said, we have options. We've also retained 2 ram lambs from last year's lambing. But again, they're so closely related with most of the ewes in our flock. So again, it's a constraint that we just have to manage, look at the data, and make our decisions about who we're breeding with who. So that's the first step in this process of setting up the breeding groups. I just wanted to go through it with you. And I will be making another video that's going to talk about the data that we use and how we interpret data. And then finally, I'll make a video that'll cover which sheep we've decided to breed with and why. So hopefully you'll find that interesting. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate you watching this video to the end, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, it would be great for the farm if you could hit the like button underneath the video here. And also, if you could subscribe to the channel, it causes YouTube to serve our video up to more viewers, helping the channel grow, which helps the farm. So it'd be great if you could subscribe. And if you wanted to get notified of new videos, you just click the bell when you subscribe. You'll get little alerts to tell you that I've uploaded a new video. So thanks again. Hope you can come back soon.